The song is very rich and abundant with themes and metaphors. She is detaching herself from this. They're not people that fit well together energetically or emotionally. I'm noticing the concept of time and time periods is very prominent in this song. It means more to the protagonist than it does to them. Hi everyone, welcome to this video. On my channel, I analyze song lyrics very in-depth through the lens of literary analysis. Today we're going to be analyzing the song FISHTAIL by Lana Del Rey from her newest album, Did You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard. I will make sure to link all of my Lana Del Rey analyses below for you. We analyze quite a lot of Lana Del Rey on this channel, and there's always more to come. So I don't know, maybe the next logical step for you would be to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications. For your reference, here's a list of literary terms I may refer to throughout this video. And as a reminder, everything I state is just my own opinion. Music is of course very subjective, and I always love hearing what you think down below in the comments. Let's get started. Lana has actually commented on this song. There's a little excerpt from her interview with Rolling Stone UK that I want to read for you guys for some context. It says, some jokes and lines are drawn directly from conversations with her girlfriends. Like on FISHTAIL, when a friend's date promised he would come over to her house to braid her hair, but he never did. And then Lana says, if people think my music is good, it's because there's other people involved in the songs and in the process of making it. So many people, she says, with a smile at just how good it is. It's really cool to get some insight into an artist's creative process. This song kind of feels like a movie. When we have the images of her swinging under the oak tree, feeling Victorian with Ella Fitzgerald in the air, that really paints a picture. It's really cool that all of this was crafted by Lana from an experience her friend had. A fishtail is a type of braid. I'm not super great at braiding hair, so to me all of the types of braids except the normal kind are difficult, but a fishtail braid I think takes a little bit of knowledge at least, so it's not the most simple type of braid. I do think it is slightly significant that this specific type of braid is used in the song. It takes a little bit more work to do a fishtail braid as opposed to a regular braid. Is there a name for a regular braid? I don't know, the one with just 3 strands. Within the song, I think that fishtail has become the code name for this guy. You guys remember FISHTAIL? That guy that said he'd braid my hair, but he never did. That's how I'm interpreting FISHTAIL within this song. I do view braiding someone's hair as an act of intimacy. For me personally, when I think about someone else braiding another person's hair, I think of a child having their hair braided by a caregiver. And to me, that's really sweet and really pure. When you're braiding like a kid's hair, it's just so like, again, pure. I need a thesaurus. I don't know what other word to use. They're so little and they're so cute and they're like this, and you're just like brushing their hair and you're being very soft with it because you don't want to cause them any pain. And you're gonna pick like cute little things to put in their hair and like ribbons. And it's a very, again, like sweet, innocent sort of thing. I do associate braiding hair more with children and with a very pure, innocent sort of energy. If we are to view it more in the context of someone who's grown up, I view that as even more intimate because you don't usually have adults braid each other's hair, right? This act of having your hair braided existed in the confines of childhood. Generally speaking, it was a very pure and beautiful thing. You don't want that act of having your hair braided be tinged by someone who doesn't have the right intentions, who is not bringing the appropriate energy into this act. That's how I'm viewing it. I'm making hair braiding seem very profound, but that is honestly how I feel about it. Braiding hair also takes a second, right? Especially if it's not a regular braid, if it's something that is a little bit more involved and intricate, like a fishtail braid would be, at least to me, right? It's gonna take a little bit of time. You're kind of close with the person. You are, in essence, helping them groom themselves in a way, right? It's a very, very intimate sort of act, and you wouldn't let anyone do that. They need to really be the right person, they need to deserve it, and they need to be carrying the appropriate emotional, mental, and spiritual energy in order for you to grant them permission to perform that act. This may sound kind of dramatic, but this is very genuinely how I feel about this, and this is what's resonating with me. And, you know, I think the protagonist of this song feels similarly because verse 1 starts out with, "Don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair, babe." Let's actually get into verse 1 so we can discuss this. "Don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair, babe." Whenever anyone says, don't you dare, they mean it. There's a little bit of attitude in that phrase. There's a little bit of hardness. Oftentimes people say, how dare you, when they've been offended by something. It's interesting because in the line right after, we have term of endearment, babe. The protagonist still cares about this love interest enough to call them babe, but they're setting a boundary. Don't you dare do this unless you mean it. It's an emotional boundary. If you don't really care. It's important to note that maybe for the love interest, the act of braiding someone's hair may not feel that intimate at all. They may not care at all. They're like, okay, this is just something I'm gonna do for fun. LOL, it's kind of like a joke. But to the protagonist, it has value. They are, again, establishing this emotional sort of boundary. To them, this would be a very intimate and valuable act. You wanted me sadder, you wanted me sadder. This lyric is repeated all throughout this song. You guys know what I say. I always say that repetition signifies significance. I am of the belief that when certain words or phrases are repeated in a song, it's significant, especially when we have intentional songwriters like Lana, especially when the repeated lyrics are not the song title. If it's not the song title, there's really no need for it to be repeated so often, so I pay more attention to it. Throughout the song, the protagonist keeps saying that the love interest wanted them sadder. This could be a subconscious thing that the love interest felt and the protagonist picked up on it. There are some instances where someone might be sad themselves and they are uncomfortable if you are not at that same level with them. They want to pull you down, and it's not necessarily because they're a bad person. A lot of this is subconscious. I really believe in energies and the energies of people, and sometimes without ill intent, someone's energy can drag you down. I am thinking about that here in this context. The love interest wanted the protagonist to be sadder. Perhaps maybe the love interest would feel more comfortable if their misery had company. And I do want to say, even from the beginning of this verse, I don't think the protagonist is saying this out loud, at least not right now to the love interest. I think that they're thinking about this. Don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair. Or maybe they are saying it. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth, honestly. I often interpret things as being internal monologues, but this could have been dialogue as well. I want to know what you think about that. Feel free to share it with me in the comments below. So when it says you wanted me sadder, I don't necessarily view that as an emotionally abusive sort of dynamic. You definitely could, but for me, it's more of an unspoken thing where you notice someone doesn't like it when you're bright and happy. They want you to be low like they are. Fishtail. What's the matter with that? That is the tone that I'm reading this last line with. I'm reading it with a little bit of irony. Because here, fishtail, I think is referring to the love interest here. It's like their code name. That's why I don't think this is being spoken out loud. It's like an internal sort of monologue. So it says, you wanted me sadder, you wanted me sadder. Fishtail, what's the matter with that? It's kind of like asking a rhetorical question. Like, what's the matter with you wanting me sadder? Literally everything is the matter with that. You don't want to be in a relationship with someone if they're going to pull you down, if they don't want you when you're happy. They only want you when you're in your emo vibes. That's not a healthy dynamic to be in. You want someone who lifts you up or at least meets you where you're at. So I am reading that last line here with a little bit of sass, which I appreciate. I enjoy some sassy lyrics. You guys know this. If the love interest does intentionally want to pull this person down to their level, that's very selfish and destructive behavior. That would be close to emotional abuse. You can take this either way. I'm more inclined to interpret this as more subtle, but just because something is subtle doesn't mean it's not destructive. So here, when I think about fishtail, about this love interest, I think about a hollow sort of intimacy. They don't value things in the same way. They are not on the same page. They're never going to work. They're not people that fit well together energetically or emotionally. That's the thesis statement of this song for me, if I were to extrapolate it out a little bit. And something I do like is the protagonist seems to be very intuitively aware of this. Now, these could be conclusions that the protagonist came to after a while, but regardless, I get the sense that this protagonist has a good amount of understanding about the dynamic she had with this love interest and that it's not necessarily the most chill one. Verse 2. Skipping rope in the bayou, slip softly in terrain. A bayou can be defined as a marshy outlet of a lake or a river. It's like a slow-moving stream. Bayous are prevalent in the southern United States. The first location I think about when I hear the word bayou is New Orleans in Louisiana. This is interesting because oftentimes the protagonists for Lana's songs reside in California, right? They're in LA, they're in Arcadia, they're in Venice Beach. Skipping rope refers to jumping rope, which is another act of childhood. This is bringing forth a connotation of innocence, some naiveness. I can't say naivete. I can't say that word, but like naiveness. You know what I'm talking about. But it's bringing forth that energy again. With braiding hair and now skipping rope, there's some youthful vibes here. slip softly in terrain. Terrain means land, and when you're around a bayou, again, it's kind of marshy. There can be soft land. When you walk on it, your feet are gonna sink down a little bit. That's what I think it's referring to. This makes me think they're like frolicking around the bayou. Throughout this whole verse, I get a sense of balance. I feel very calm and centered when I read through these lyrics and when I listen to this song as well. Sometimes when your feet kind of sinks into that softer land, it may not be the most pleasant feeling, but the way it's being described feels chill. I think about a protagonist who's in a balanced state. They're able to go with the flow. These things that may be annoyances to other people, like their feet kind of slipping down into the land, are not annoying the protagonist because she's in alignment with nature. That's what I'm thinking about here. It's due to the diction, particularly the word softly. And then the protagonist says she's not that smart, but she's got things to say. This is a sad but balanced sort of statement. There's no insecurity here. I feel like the statement is coming from a pretty stable sort of place. I get the sense that the protagonist respects and values her words and her thoughts. And I really enjoy this. I feel like this protagonist is in a very healthy place emotionally. You know, sometimes when people are in an argument and one person is very passionate and they're yelling, they're all over the place, their face is turning red, they have tears in their eyes, and then the other person is just chill, they're just calm. I get the sense that in this dynamic, this protagonist is that chill person. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because they can't feel emotion. It's because they're balanced. They are in alignment with who they are. They have respect for themselves, and there's no internal conflict. In my analysis of the song Paris, Texas, I talked about the concept of cognitive dissonance. This is a psychological term, and it refers to when your external situation doesn't match your internal beliefs. So that can result in some internal friction and internal conflict. This protagonist here, in my opinion, doesn't have cognitive dissonance. How they feel is how they act. How they feel is represented externally. Everything, again, is in alignment. I'm sorry I keep using that word, but I keep thinking about that word here. They're chill, right? And I view this is very healthy. When someone is chill like this, you can't really mess with them. There's no like BS going on. I think this protagonist got to this place while in this relationship or this situationship. I don't think she was like this at the beginning. And I say that because of how the song proceeds and how it ends. We have the lyrics about red flags and everything. So we're gonna get there. But I think that this relationship was a learning experience for this protagonist, and it kind of led them to be in this balanced state. I associate a sense of wisdom with the protagonist. Palm trees in black and white. I like to watch them sway. This is interesting because right now, setting-wise, we're in the southern United States. Now listen, palm trees do exist in the southern United States, but it's not the tree that you think of at first. I personally associate palm trees with the West Coast, like with California. Palm trees in black and white. Black and white makes me think of a few different things. It makes me think of the past, like black and white photos. Since they're swaying here in this lyric, I think about black and white movies. And I will say, I personally do view the southern United States as being a sort of time capsule due to a lot of the architecture and also to the literal history. There's a lyric later in the song that talks about being Victorian, and that refers to a time period. The Victorian time period refers to the British, not to the United States. However, it's interesting because when I think about the southern United States and like those big houses, it makes me think of the past. And then we have the word Victorian here as well. So to me, that's just interesting. And then we have black and white. So there is a feeling of thinking about the past. And then we also have the mention of Ella Fitzgerald in a little bit. And that's a totally different time period than the Victorian time period, but it's still the past, right? And it's referring to jazz music. I feel some time capsule-y vibes here. And I think that when there are vibes of the past, it can sometimes make the emotions seem heavier and more palpable because you think of emotions that have grown over time or memories that have existed for a long time. And I'm not saying that the events of this song occurred a long time ago. I'm interpreting it as like a modern song of something that recently happened, but there's diction here that makes me think about that sort of thing. Makes me think about history in a way, and not like US history or European history, not like historical events, but it makes me think of the concept of time. I understand that's an abstract and sort of ambiguous concept, but that is a sort of energy that I'm sensing within the context of this song. In addition to something black and white being something older, I also think about something that's a little bit more dramatic. Also, when something is black and white, there is less stimulation going on. There's less things for you to focus on. It's definitely something that's more fine-tuned, more focused. and it's something that doesn't have anything extraneous. It's kind of like stripping away of the excess. There's a lot of ways to extrapolate that out. I would love to know what you think. Feel free to share it with me in the comments below. The fact that the protagonist likes to watch palm trees sway is another thing that's giving me a balanced connotation from this verse. Whenever I view any sort of tree swaying in the wind, I feel very balanced and centered and calm. I think it's so healing just to observe that. I do view that as a balanced sort of motion, so that's why I keep getting balanced vibes from this verse and from this protagonist. Then it says, "You're so funny, I wish I could skinny dip inside your mind." I get the sense that the protagonist and the love interest are just hanging out here in verse 2. This could be the summation of one day that they were hanging out and they were hanging out outside, or these could all be little snippets from different times they've been hanging out. It sounds to me like they've spent a lot of time outdoors because there are a lot of references to nature. Skipping rope in the bayou, that's outside. Slipping softly into terrain, that's outside. We have palm trees. Skinny dipping is something that you do outside, right? If you're skinny dipping at home, you're literally just taking a bath. Lots of outdoor activities here. When you skinny dip, it means that you're going swimming naked. And the protagonist here wishes they could skinny dip inside this love interest's mind. They want to be closer to them, not just physically, but in a more cerebral, mental sort of way. I would argue emotional as well. Also, the protagonist says love interest is funny. I do sense some admiration here on part of the protagonist towards the love interest. She likes this fishtail person. Verse 3. I interrupt this video with a very special message from myself. This is sponsored by me. I want to let you guys know that I'm offering services. I'm offering a few different things. I can help you refine your own analysis skills to develop your own unique perspective about poetry, about song lyrics, about any written work. I've also been getting a lot of messages from you guys letting me know that you use my videos to help you learn English. So if you need an English conversation partner, I'm your girl. We can converse through the internet. I can help you with pronunciation, sentence structure, and random things about American culture that are not super intuitive. If you're a songwriter or a poet and want me to read your original piece of work and provide you with a very detail-oriented feedback, I can do that as well. All that information is going to be linked down below. If you have any questions about any of the services I'm offering, please message me directly through the website. Back to the video that you actually clicked here for. I really love verse 3. I love listening to it. I get some really interesting vibes from this verse. It says, "Lately, I've been thinking about how things used to be, swinging in a nightgown underneath the old oak tree, almost Victorian with you. You can talk to me. But lately, I can't see." So the protagonist has been reflecting on the past. Perhaps the past was verse 2. Those may have been moments that they've spent together when they were hanging out. The protagonist refers to swinging in a nightgown underneath the old oak tree. I envision this happening at night. I also envision the chorus about the protagonist being on the stairs with Ella Fitzgerald in the air. I envision that at night as well. I also think the diction nightgown here is contributing to that. I think about a tire swing underneath the oak tree. This is another thing that is kind of childlike, right? Not to say that adults don't enjoy, swinging on a swing. However, this is something that I associate more with childhood, swinging on a swing. Let's talk about an oak tree. This could be a context clue, or this could be more symbolic. Generally speaking, I do view trees as holding a lot of ancient wisdom. Trees are something to respect. Nature in general is something to respect, but trees, there's just a very profound, wise energy that I associate with them. When you look up oak tree symbolism, it says oak trees can be associated with themes like longevity, strength, stability, endurance, fertility, power, justice, and honesty. For me, out of this list, I'm thinking about longevity, strength, and stability because the protagonist is thinking about the past and this is about a relationship. She's swinging under an oak tree. So this oak tree is very stable. It's old, so it's pretty wide, right? It has a lot of rings in its trunk. She's swinging under it. So there's a movement underneath something that's very stable and protective. So I think that's an interesting sort of juxtaposition, honestly. I feel like this is a juxtaposition. That's what I'm sensing here. Something stable, something wise, and then you have someone swinging underneath it. I associate that with childhood again, with innocence again, and there's movement next to stability. I find that interesting. I find those energies not to be opposing, but they are kind of opposite. Sometimes opposite energies can also be complementary and they can feel safe. I feel like the tree is like a protective figure here in this context. There's a lot of like very interesting energies present in this song, and these energies are created by the diction and the imagery here. This is a really interesting song to analyze. There's a lot of depth and a lot of things to be explored within this song. There's so many ways to extrapolate this out. I'm unsure of like which route I want to take. I just want to tell you guys as many things that I'm sensing, and hopefully one of them will resonate with you. But this song is really, really interesting. It's very rich. It's rich, full of abstract sort of feelings, which is something I really, really enjoy. This is why I love analysis. Almost Victorian with you. This is interesting. I'm also thinking about a Victorian nightgown, so I'm getting a lot of vibes here, right? The diction here is lending itself to a lot of different themes and different storylines that you can interpret this song through. A Victorian nightgown is something I'm envisioning the protagonist wearing while they're swinging underneath the oak tree during the night. This could all be symbolic. This could literally be something that she did. I'm thinking about summer nights. I don't know why. I just am. I know we have the mention of summer later in the song, the summer bruises. I get like summer night vibes from this. Summer nights in the South. That sort of vibe. Perhaps this is a summer love. That's definitely possible. Victorian is referring to a specific time period. It's from 1837 to 1901. This is referring to Great Britain. If we are to think about that time period through the lens of love and romance, this is when people had courtships. You weren't really like dating. You weren't really alone with the opposite sex. If someone was interested in you, they would court you. Maybe you would hang out together and there would be a chaperone, and then you would get engaged. It was very proper. It was very streamlined, relatively speaking. Some people find that romantic. I know that we're all romanticizing Bridgerton right now. Other people find it troubling. I'm somewhere in the middle with this. I can see both perspectives, but this is something that a lot of people romanticize. And I want to point that out because there seems to be an underlying theme to childhood and innocence. And to me, thinking about courtship in this way is a little bit more innocent, right? It's more pure. And it's not like 100% pure, but like relatively speaking, you know what I mean? It's something that is more like proper. And it's something that's very streamlined. It's like a process, something that's digestible for someone younger to understand. A lot of people may view this as more chivalrous and less sensual, something more romantic. And also just thinking about the image of a nightgown, I'm envisioning a white nightgown for some reason, and I view that as being representative of innocence as well and of youth. I don't necessarily know why all of these themes are popping up in this song. It's really interesting to me. I literally am envisioning a whole movie due to the lyric. There's just a lot going on. I know I've said this before, this song is very rich and abundant with themes and metaphors. But the protagonist is saying, almost Victorian with you, you can talk to me. I think here when the protagonist says almost Victorian, it means that there's two sides to the relationship. There's like the proper courtship side where it seems as though the guy is committed to her. He's not just messing around. He's courted her. He's shown his intention. He is interested. There's been consistent movement forward in the relationship. That's what I think the Victorian aspect is referring to. The qualifier almost here kind of modernizes it in a way. I think this is saying that they have the passion and they have the chivalry and respect as well. The protagonist is talking about what she likes about their dynamic. She says, you can talk to me, but lately I can't see. When she says I can't see, I think she's referring to her not being able to see why they're together anymore. She can't see the same connection that they had in the past. There seems to be a shift in the dynamic. She can't see what used to be there because it no longer exists. Chorus. We have repetition of the lyrics, you wanted me sadder. And then we have the lyric, can't you see it? This is a very important lyric in my opinion because you can interpret it in two ways. It says, you wanted me sadder, can't you see it? As if the protagonist is saying, can't you see how you don't like me when I'm happy? You want me to be on a lower, sadder level. Or, can't you see it can be referring to the lyrics after it, where it says, can't you see it? For me, you are the one. So there's a lot of things that this love interest is not aware of. The dynamic here seems to no longer be balanced. the love interest seems to be more committed and more in love with this romantic partner. Maybe it's been like this the whole time, and now the protagonist is seeing the truth. They can't see what was going on in the past. It doesn't exist, but maybe it was like this the whole time and they're finally seeing the truth. We have a mention later of glasses being taken off and red flags not being visible. Or maybe there has been a shift. Maybe the love interest was into this more in the beginning, and now maybe they're not anymore. And if I'm not the one for you, don't just say it. The protagonist here isn't saying don't say it at all. They're saying don't just say it. I think here they're asking the love interest to break the news to them in a respectful way. They're asking the love interest to be careful with their heart. The protagonist may have given their heart to them. They believe they're the one. The protagonist in this instance is in a fragile state emotionally. That's how I'm interpreting it. I was on the stairs, Ella Fitzgerald in the air, feeling hello rare. I love these lyrics here. It flows really nicely. It's really, really catchy. But what I find interesting is that the protagonist being on the stairs feels not regal, but it feels like an image that occurred in the past, just like I've been talking about. And Ella Fitzgerald was a very, very popular and prominent jazz singer. She has such a beautiful voice, and it's something that is reminiscent of the past. However, saying the word hella is modern slang. It's a very interesting sort of juxtaposition. I think it keeps this lyric kind of fresh and interesting. I love how it's incorporating, again, time in a very interesting way in this song. I'm noticing the concept of time and time periods is something that's very prominent in this song. I don't know how intentional this was, but it's really, really cool. I love that it says Ella Fitzgerald was in the air. This makes me think that the music was playing outside, thinking about the summer air, right? There's something different about summer air, especially at night. It just hits different. And it makes me think that Ella Fitzgerald's very beautiful and rich voice was part of the setting. It's not just something coming out of a speaker, it's something that is being incorporated into the setting. This is really interesting because with Lana Del Rey songs, setting is really, really important. Exhibit A, Summertime Sadness. I'm gonna link my analysis below for you. I talked a lot about how that setting was sinister. Here though, I don't think the setting is sinister at all, but there's something very palpable in the air here. I really like it when Lana incorporates elements about the settings in her songs because it's just, I don't know, it hits different. Lana is really skillful in describing the elements of a setting, and I think she does so in a very subtle, beautiful way. I really respect it. This type of writing is something I enjoy because I can't place my finger on what it is exactly, but there are so many intricate elements that are contributing to how I feel about the setting here. It's really, really cool, and I respect this so much. It's so satisfying to analyze and so cool to feel. She could have been on the stairs walking down to meet her date, her love interest. She was probably wearing a very beautiful dress. Or maybe they were on the landing of the stairs. I'm thinking about champagne problems now. My analysis is linked down below. But maybe they were on the landing of the stairs and they were like having a moment together, and there was Ella Fitzgerald playing in the background. There's lots of ways to visualize this, but I think this was just a very good night. There are some moments in life where everything is just chill and perfect and calm when you're not even thinking about the moment. You are the moment. You're existing in the present, and it's something that's very beautiful when it happens. I think this is one of those moments. The protagonist was feeling herself. She was feeling special, and it's something that she felt internally and maybe also based on her love interest reaction to her as well. Baby, if you care, baby, don't you dare say you'll braid my hair, babe. Protagonist here, in essence, is saying, if you care about me at all, don't you dare say you're gonna braid my hair. I think sometimes how much you care about someone is really evident in the way you choose to break up with them. If you break up with them in a way that is disrespectful, it can be indicative of the fact that you never cared about them at all. There are a lot of elements to a breakup and how you choose to do it. I'm not trying to make a general rule. This is something that I'm thinking about here. I think the protagonist here is saying that she realizes she cares about the love interest more than they do about her, but if they care about her even a little bit, she's asking them not to say they're gonna braid her hair. In essence, she's saying don't make promises of a very palpable and meaningful sort of intimacy. That's a promise I know you can't fulfill even if you think you want to. It means more to the protagonist than it does to them, and she's aware of this. Don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair, babe, if you don't really care. You wanted me sadder. It appears as though the protagonist is not 100% what the love interest wants. The love interest wants and perhaps needs someone who's sadder than the protagonist. And again, you can interpret this in a way that is bordering emotional abuse a little bit more. For me, what's resonating is something more subtle where, like I mentioned earlier, the love interest can't really vibe with someone who's not on their emotional sad level. And that's something that the protagonist maybe didn't realize at first. Verse 4. There in the hot, hot sun, I know that we've got problems. I plan to address them another day. If I was wearing sunglasses, I would put them down right now. Another day. I was getting summer vibes in the previous verses. Now I'm getting summer vibes, but in a different way. This is a sort of heat that's kind of bothering you a little bit now, right? We have repetition of the word hot. It's the hot. It's very, very hot. The protagonist is 100% aware that they've got problems. She's not wondering about it. She's not analyzing anything. She knows. A thesis statement has been reached. She is, however, choosing to ignore it for now. She is aware that something needs to be done and something needs to be addressed. She's going to do it a little bit later. Maybe not in the summer, maybe when it's closer to PSL season. Palm trees in black and white. That lyric is repeated. I see in Technicolor. There's been a progression here. Previously, the protagonist loved to see the palm trees in black and white sway. Now she's seeing in Technicolor. Technicolor is very vibrant. It refers to a form of colorizing film that was made really popular by The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz wasn't the first movie to use Technicolor, but it's one of the movies that people think of. Technicolor is very vivid. It's very much on the opposite spectrum of black and white. Notice, the protagonist is not saying she wants to see in Technicolor or wishes she could. She literally does see in Technicolor. She's coming into her own in this instance. She's realizing that this dynamic is not going to work for her. When she is emotionally with this love interest, she sees the palm trees in black and white. Perhaps the love interest was metaphorically stealing the color from the protagonist's viewpoint, from the world. She had to be more emo when she was with him, to put it lightly. But she doesn't want to be in emo vibes right now. She not only wants to see in Technicolor, but that's her default setting. She simply does see in Technicolor. She can see all the beauty in the world. She can feel all of these different vibrant emotions. Maybe I'll take my glasses off so I stop painting red flags green. The protagonist wants to take her glasses off. She wants to see things clearly. What I do find interesting is that the protagonist is saying that she is painting. It's not 100% attributed to the glasses. The act of painting is something that the protagonist is doing. So it's kind of like the protagonist is acknowledging that she's had a hand in this. I like that she is taking ownership of the role that she's played in her life of not placing enough value on red flags. She noticed them because she painted them, right? If she didn't notice them at all, she wouldn't have gone to paint them to try to lie to herself about it and to try to ignore it. I think this is definitely a sort of emotional maturing of the protagonist, and this is what's causing her to be in that balanced emotional state that I talked about earlier in this analysis. Verse 5. Lately, I've been sunning in the LA riverbed, wearing nothing but the summer bruises on my knees. So now we do have a change of setting from the southern United States back to LA. Perhaps the protagonist is no longer in that relationship with a romantic interest. Maybe that relationship was based in the southern United States where we had the bayous, but now we're back in LA. The relationship no longer exists. Or maybe they are still together, they're just taking some space, or maybe the protagonist is just visiting home, right? There's different ways to extrapolate this out. I do want to say something about the LA River, and this could not be that deep, or it could be very deep. If you research the LA River, it has a very interesting history. The article that I'm going to reference, I want to just read you the little excerpt it has. This whole article, by the way, I really enjoy the tone. It's really funny, and if you're interested, I would recommend reading it. It says, LA Explained, the LA River. And then underneath it says, is it a river, a sewer, a flood control channel, a place to film awesome drag racing scenes, a tool of gentrifiers to raise property values? What's the deal with the LA River? And why should I care about it? Let's find out. Like literally LOL, I find that to be so funny. But the thing with the LA River is that it's not like a freshwater river. You don't want to go swimming in it. I actually don't even think you're allowed to do that. I don't think it's safe enough. Water comes from two different sources, from rain and from wastewater treatment plants. This article states that in the summer, keep in mind, in this verse we're in, it's referring to the summertime. In the summer, when it doesn't rain in Los Angeles, the river doesn't just run dry. Instead, it's fed by wastewater discharged from 3 wastewater treatment plants. I talk about how hard I stand water imagery on this channel and how I do not think stagnant water is positive, but how I often view running water as positive because there's lively motion involved. However, this river may be flowing, but the water is not the cleanest, right? And the water is coming from wastewater treatment plants. So the connotation of this to me is not that positive. It's not the usual type of water imagery that we interpret on this channel. There's a bit more darkness and more dirtiness to this image, in my opinion. The protagonist says they've been sunning in the LA riverbed. Sunning just means like laying out, tanning. So she's been relaxing in the LA riverbed, a riverbed that's not the cleanest literally and also metaphorically. There are some, not so chill undertones to this. The protagonist then says they're wearing nothing but summer bruises on their knees. This is interesting. It's kind of parallel to the skinny dipping in your mind lyric. It's interesting it says summer bruises on the protagonist's knee. The bruises here have a qualifier in front of it. These are summer bruises. These are low-key, like injuries that were not only caused within the time period of summer, but another way to read this is that they were caused by the summer. You can take this a step further and personify the season of summer. I don't necessarily get that sense here. We have talked about personification of the setting before. I think in Summertime Sadness, I touched upon it. And also in The Louvre by Lorde, Summer Slipped Us Underneath Her Tongue. That was very straightforward personification of the setting. Super interesting. I will link both analyses below for you. I don't necessarily think this is personifying the season of summer, but the bruises here are very much being attributed to the summertime. And I'm thinking about the summertime as the time in which the protagonist was in this relationship, or when this relationship was really flourishing. The protagonist may not be in the bayou and the summertime may be ending soon, but there's still evidence that it happened. And the evidence we have of the summertime, the only remnants we have in this lyric are things that resulted from pain. So far, the LA riverbed, not the chillest of vibes, bruises, not the chillest of vibes either. Then it says, I like how you talk, how you speak, how you look at me, but lately, protagonist says, again, she can't see. The protagonist does admire the love interest. They like how they talk, they like how they speak. Talking and speaking, those words are similar, but they can be different. When I think about someone talking, I think about the tone of their voice, like what it sounds like. I think about something more casual, but when I think about someone speaking, I think of them discussing their thoughts in an eloquent manner. I view the diction talk as more casual, and I view speak as more formal. I feel like there's more intent with the word speak. I think of someone organizing their thoughts in a very well-structured way to try to deliver a point. So the protagonist is saying they like how this love interest talks casually. They like the tone of their voice. They like the slang they use. They like the jokes they make. But they also like how the protagonist speaks in a more eloquent manner. They like their mind. Remember, they wanted to skinny dip in their mind. The protagonist also likes how the love interest looks at them. They probably look at them in a way that suggests that they have strong feelings for them and that they want them. They're attracted to them. However, there seems to be a shift. I'm saying that because of the diction lately. The protagonist can no longer see, and I'm interpreting that as they can no longer see why they're together, or they can no longer see the love that they thought was once there. This is a repeated lyric. This lyric was present earlier in the song, and I'm interpreting it pretty much the same way I did the first time. Chorus number 2. The second chorus consists of repeated lyrics. The only lyrics that are new is the lyric towards the end that says, don't you dare say that you'll braid my hair when you get home tonight. And then a little bit later it says, don't you braid my hair if you're not coming home to me. I wouldn't necessarily interpret any of the repeated lyrics differently than I did before. I do think it's interesting that it says when you get home tonight if you're not coming home with me. Feels a little bit more unsure on part of the protagonist. Perhaps previously there was never a doubt that the love interest was going to come back home to the protagonist. That was a thing that protagonist knew with certainty, but I feel like now there is more doubt present in the second chorus with the addition of those two lyrics. The protagonist is no longer sure where they stand. And now we have the outro. The first line of this outro is very significant. I view this as a very final, calm realization the protagonist is having. This is very much a firm thesis statement. It says, you want someone sadder. It no longer says you wanted me sadder. She is detaching herself from this. She's not saying that the love interest wants her to be sadder. She's saying you just want someone sadder. It seems like the love interest maybe doesn't care who they're with as long as it's someone that's sad or as sad as them. You can take this a little further and say that the love interest, maybe in their pattern of relationships, doesn't care who they're with. They only care about the emotional state of who they're with. And if that person is sad or can come down to their level of sadness so they'll be comfortable. I do get a sense of detachment from this lyric here, and to me that's a positive thing. It seems like the protagonist is moving on from this relationship because they had this realization. And this also shows me that the protagonist is not willing to budge within her own emotional landscape. She's not going to become sadder for him. Sometimes we either consciously or subconsciously go down to someone's level because we don't want to lose them. But then, and this is very cliche, but then we end up losing ourselves. That's why I think it's so important to have boundaries and life values and like pillars of ethics, things of that nature that you establish for yourself before you get involved with anyone or before you get involved in anything, right? You need to have a strong foundation. So if someone tries to like do something, you're firm in your decision making. It's slightly harder for emotions to take over when you already have an established set of things that are non-negotiables for you. And then we have repeated lyrics, but the connotations here are so incredibly different. I love songs like this when we have repeated lyrics at the end. It's kind of full circle, but the repeated lyrics have a completely different connotation. I really, really enjoy that. It's pretty sad, but I still enjoy it. I think that it's emotionally satisfying, even though it's not like super happy. It says, skipping rope in the bayou, slip softly in terrain. Protagonist says they're not that smart, but they've got things to say. Now, when I read those lyrics, these are memories now. These are something that happened in the distant past. The protagonist can look back on them fondly, but she's not in the midst of it anymore, right? She can appreciate them, but it's not something that's going to captivate her the same way it did maybe when she was experiencing it, or even maybe when she was thinking back to it like a few weeks ago before this thesis statement came to her. And the protagonist now saying they're not smart, but they've got things to say is slightly more ironic because they've come to such a profound and important conclusion that the love interest wants someone sadder. Maybe that's why the love interest maybe seems more distant, because the protagonist was not sad enough for them. I think this outro is very positive. I think that there has been a progression in the emotional state and levels of understanding and maturity within the protagonist. They are ending up in a place that's very beneficial for them. I am happy with this outro. I like that there's a bit of a resolution, in my opinion. I think that this is a very beautiful accumulation of an internal journey that this protagonist has gone through. And I'm happy that this relationship seems to have ended. I don't think it was the healthiest dynamic for this protagonist. And this is not to say anything like negative about the love interest here. This could have all been subconscious, but if someone can't love you unless you're sad like them or sadder than them, that's incredibly unhealthy. When you're in a relationship with someone, they should want the best for you and you should want the best for them. The realization that this protagonist had is something that I'm sure was pretty subtle within the relationship. So I definitely commend the protagonist for coming to this realization. That's all I have for this song. Please, please, please tell me what you think of this song. Again, there's so many intricate things going on. I think there's a lot of ways to interpret it and to extrapolate it out. I would love to know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. My tutoring and consulting services are linked down below. Feel free to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!